This week on Full Circle Florida, the governor power grab. Political podcaster Anthony Russo joins me on why the 2026 governor races matter more than the races for Congress. And governors rigging the game and shifting your vote, the race to redraw those congressional maps and what it really means for you. And forget Epstein, what is really keeping voters up at night? Forrest Saunders joins me on education, insurance, and okay, yes, we do have an update on Epstein from Tallahassee. Welcome in, everyone. The 2026 governor races could eclipse the battle for Congress, steering America's power and deciding the next presidency. Here's my conversation this week with Anthony Russo, host of The Truth Will Set You Free.
What's happening, everybody? I have decided that tomorrow I'm going to go back to doing podcasting.
Anthony, thanks for being with us. You know, the backdrop on all of this is Trump's approval rating is falling, but Democrats really don't know who they are yet. So just because Trump voters are frustrated with the president doesn't mean they're going to necessarily turn Democrat. So we look at the governor's races in 2026 as sort of a political refuge for voters to make a difference before 2028. Do you see that as an outlet for those voters?
Absolutely. And you know what's crazy about it is governors truly are going to be painting the lines for American citizens in the ongoing from 2026 to 2028 and beyond. There's a lot of rights going back to the states. Love it, hate it, whatever you want to do with the big, beautiful bill. There is a lot of deregulation on the federal level. So the governors are truly going to be the gatekeepers for the American people.
Well, how could those governor's races, the gubernatorial races, end up mattering more than the races for Congress?
You know, when we start pushing things to the state rights, next thing you know, there's going to be the ability for them to make these major decisions. It's also going to lead to major redistricting into the rights that the governors have in order to essentially take their mini country, which is the way the Constitution and why we're a republic is written. They get to take their mini country and run it the way that they see fit, almost in the outskirts of what is the federal government, the purveyor of the federal government. So they've got a lot of abilities as a governor to make massive changes. And I think Florida's a perfect place. You've seen what DeSantis has had the ability to do. And that's going to be an option all over the country. The question becomes, will the red wave continue into 2026, which therefore will have big implications for the 2028 elections?
Well, some of these red states have gained power because they've gained electoral seats because of population shifts. And some of these blue states, particularly in the Northeast, and California is also going through this, they've lost population. And some of them have actually lost electoral seats, which has given these governors more power. When you talk about redistricting, though, which races in 2026 could reshape the national balance of power outside of those population trends?
Absolutely. North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin are really the biggest ones to watch. North Carolina is likely to determine redistricting control. A flip here could actually drastically reshape the U.S. House map, which is a big deal to watch. That plays a big role. I didn't mention California in there, even though it's a hot topic, and it's something that I want to bring up because obviously when we look to immigration is this big, is Trump doing the right thing? Is it overreach, or what's going on at the border? What people don't understand is when you start to get census numbers, and California does have a lot of the undocumented citizens, but what's interesting about those is that will cause a redistricting number because they're just putting a value, an electoral college value and districting value based on the population, does not have to be citizens. So that is why some people are saying it's so important for Trump to do the deportations that he's doing, even though it does seem a little bit extreme. But like I said, North Carolina, California that I didn't mention at the offset, Wisconsin, if Republicans win the governorship, that really is starting to bring all the things together that they need for the major redistricting in 2028.
Yeah, no matter how you feel about immigration, whether Trump and his administration is being humane or too hard about it, I don't know if a lot of people disagree with the fact that should non-citizens count in the population that determines the electoral power of that state. That would seem to be counterintuitive there. But 36 races, 15 open seats. The GOP, the Republicans, hold 27 governorships right now. The Dems, 23. Which party has more at stake in 2026 when it comes to the governor's races?
It's a tough question, because the thing is this: people always like to move to the center when there's a new chief in charge, because they're going to say some of the middle grounders that voted for Trump are going, you know what, I feel like it's going too far, so let me start shifting to the other side. The problem is the Democrats don't have a stronghold on who their base is anymore. Their messaging has become a little bit too extreme. Pete Buttigieg did an interview in the last couple of days where he's saying this exact same thing. He could be one of the torchbearers of the Democrat Party. And when you ask him what's going on, he goes, we're confused. We're stuck in this previous norm that needs to drastically shift. So voters of both parties are currently probably what you would consider frustrated, and especially the independents right now, and the soft Trump supporters that weren't sold on Biden and not sold on Kamala. They're looking for their political savior, and they haven't found it yet. Yeah. Right now, the Republicans obviously are in the lead. Yeah. The Democrats have to play from behind. So really, it's the Republicans to lose, but the Democrats need to make up some ground.
All roads lead, of course, to 2028 when we talk about this. And I don't care what the candidates say. It's clear who's running for president. Ron DeSantis is going to run for president again. Gavin Newsom obviously is going to run for president. But how critical is a Republican win in Florida, which would seem to be a cakewalk at this point for DeSantis' 2028 ambition?
Absolutely. I mean, it's massive. We know he obviously not on the ballot, but Florida is his brand. If Republicans lose Florida, it weakens first off his 2028 viability to potentially run the country, and if he can't make his leadership model transferable, it becomes a huge problem. Now, if Florida, which I don't see this happening, but if Florida slips red to purple in 2026, DeSantis doesn't just lose his base; he actually loses the narrative of the fact that he is. For semi-permanence, shifted Florida to be a red state that believes in the anti-woke ideology and all the different things that he put in place from an economic perspective, from a health perspective, and also from an education perspective.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But as they say, all politics is local, and it appears that perhaps starts at the state line. Anthony Russo from the podcast, The Truth Will Set You Free. Thank you for your insight. Thanks for joining us. Next on Full Circle Florida, Forrest Saunders joins me on what keeps you up at night. Mortgages, schools, not Epstein, not Russia, but are leaders actually listening to you? We are next. Okay, let's bring in Tallahassee correspondent Forrest Saunders, and let's talk about what the national media and the politicians are not talking about, Forrest, because this is where the rubber really meets the road for families and voters. And it's not Epstein, it's not the Russia hoax, it's not even Alligator Alcatraz, it's can I pay my rent, my mortgage, can I pay my insurance, is my kid going to a good school, are the teachers checked out because they're not getting paid enough? So I know this week you did some reporting on the governor touting budget increases in education, but I talked and I interviewed superintendent of Sarasota County Schools this week, and he tells me that's great, but it's not keeping up with inflation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, so your per pupil funding has been increased, as well as teacher salaries. But the problem is that those dollar amounts just really are insignificant when you account for all of the inflation that we've seen just since the 2020 pandemic. Specifically, when it comes to teacher pay, if you look at the $100 million that the legislature approved for this budget, it's just about $20 a month for the average teacher going into their wallets, and $20 is not enough to really keep up with the affordability crisis that some say the state of Florida is in.
Meanwhile, insurance, whether it's car insurance, property insurance, and really I would argue the big one, health insurance, this may be the most personal, most threatening topic for everyday folks. And politicians, they don't like to talk honestly about it because there are no easy answers. It's a hard one to figure out. It's easier to talk about Epstein or Alligator Alcatraz. State leaders keep trying to spin this as, things are getting better, but people keep contacting us here at the station telling us that they're either getting dropped or they feel like they're getting taken advantage of. We did a story about a woman this week who needed life-saving treatment, chemotherapy for her cancer, and her health insurance company just denied it. And it took us doing the story for her to finally get the treatment. So do they really think that people are buying this notion that insurance is getting better?
What they say is that we've stabilized, and eventually capitalism will do its thing and competition will bring down rates. And we are seeing some of that just in small portions. We're talking about an average of 6.5% for most of Florida's auto insurers and some smaller rates for housing. But again, is the average person going to feel that? Maybe, maybe not, because you also have to factor in inflation. You have to factor in what other factors go into premiums, like where you're located, if you're on the coast or if you're driving in a large metro. So a lot of affordability questions remain as we continue to move forward. And as much as Republicans in the legislature want to say they were given a mandate to tackle illegal immigration, voters also said the economy was important to them, and nowhere else is that specifically a big problem than right here in Florida.
Let's not ignore the Epstein story, because it's obviously a big story, and you are at the epicenter of it, my friend. They're in Tallahassee. Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, serving a sentence there. And what are we expecting to come out of that building where, Trump's former personal attorney has met with her? There's this question about, is she really going to get immunity to name names?
Yeah, we don't know. And that's really the frustrating part, I think, for a lot of people who've been following the Epstein case, is that we really haven't gotten a whole lot of information from the Justice Department yet. And then you got to ask yourself the question of whether or not she has any kind of incentive to actually tell the truth, given this administration is in power and there are questions about the ties between the Trump administration and Epstein. Trump specifically, what he knew, how close he was to Epstein. I mean, it's just a quagmire right now, but we are waiting and watching to see what happens here in Tallahassee, because this is where she's held up, in the federal prison just up the road from me.
Yeah, it's funny because years ago when she was being prosecuted, apparently she didn't know anything, and now all of a sudden she's the key to the whole case and has all the receipts. So funny how things change. All right, Forrest Saunders, we covered it all from Epstein to the economy. As always, thank you. Next on Full Circle Florida, Dr. Susan McManis is back this week, diving deep on redistricting, how governors are redrawing the maps, shifting your vote's power, and how it's changing America's political landscape. Welcome back to Full Circle Florida. Let's bring in our political analyst, Dr. Susan McManis, on a week where politicos were talking about redrawing congressional maps. First of all, I'm glad you're back. Thanks for coming back on the show. This is something I don't think is getting a lot of coverage that it deserves, but Texas Governor Greg Abbott pushing to redraw congressional maps mid-decade to gain Republican seats, prompting California's Governor Gavin Newsom to threaten to do the same. Why are governors like these, and Florida's Ron DeSantis before them, diving into this map drawing power play?
It's all about the next year's congressional elections. The president is pushing Republican governors to redraw the maps to try to squeeze out some more Republican seats, because keep in mind there's just almost no difference, a couple vote seats difference between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans control the U.S. House.
Right.
So the president is deathly afraid that he might lose the House, which would mean that his second half of his administration would be almost impossible to get anything done.
Is this hate the game, not the player? I mean, who benefits from this, the voters or the parties?
Well, most people, when they think of it, they hear the word gerrymandering, and that's a negative term. It's different from redistricting. Redistricting is drawing lines to make sure that each district represents the same number of people. Gerrymandering is where you rig the lines, so to speak, to make sure that one party or one race or one geography, urban area or whatever, has more power.
The assumption is that's what they're doing, though, that they're always going to work in their interest first.
Well, first of all, there's not any plan that's not drawn that's not going to be political.
Yeah.
Legislators in most states are the ones that draw the lines governors approve. Some states have independent commissions, like California. The governor can't touch that. An independent commission is the one that draws the lines.
Well, Governor Newsom's plan in California would actually bypass that independent redistricting commission that you're talking about.
But wait, there's a question about the legality of that.
Yeah.
It would take a constitutional amendment, and can they get it through the courts in time?
Is that an escalation? Is he responding directly to Texas, and is this now sort of an arms race?
Yes. Right now, one side, you have Texas, you have Indiana and Missouri have already been identified, and then you have a possibility, of course, of Florida and Ohio. On the other side, you have California. These are states that said they're interested in evening up. New York, Washington, Indiana, Illinois.
Yeah.
So it's becoming a tit for tat. It's all about controlling the U.S. House. That's what it's about.
Well, how much of this, when you change the maps, how much of that reflects the actual will of the people? Can voters' voices be accurately reflected when these things are being drawn for political gain? People feel like the system's rigged.
Well, yes, and at polls, we don't have a lot of them. They basically say that they don't trust any of this kind of stuff. But when you say will of the people, well, the people is not a consensual group. Within a state, you have people that differ on urban and rural, on race and ethnicity, on party affiliation, on neighborhood versus whatever, on combining minority groups to make a district or separating them out. The will of the people is really hard to discern. But one thing we do know, the politics of it is such that a lot of people think it's all about a game, but the consequences, as we know, are very big when you're talking about controlling Congress.
Which party has more to lose when it comes to this? I know California is very worried. I mean, Newsom essentially said if what is happening continues to happen, it's kind of game over for Democrats.
Well, they've looked at some of the rules out there, and by everyone's account, experts' account, the Republicans have the upper hand because the states that they're talking about redrawing in don't have the stringent rules about redistricting as the blue states.
Yeah.
And so definitely the blue states are worrying. And in some of the totally controlled blue states, you can't squeeze out another district.
So what is that about? And I've sort of intimated this before when I interviewed Nikki Fried a couple of weeks ago. Are Democrats playing to win the game, or are they playing to make a statement? Should they be playing this game better, even if they don't like it?
It's a big question. They have to start with the basics. I'm sure that she talked about it. They've got to build up their base and registration. They can't be spending a lot of time and money on this kind of issue. They can get involved personally in their party people, but as a state party, they're not in a position right now financially or politically to get heavily involved in this. Yes, they'll make strong comments, and yes, there'll be protests and whatever. But this is not a game that Florida Democrats can really win too much.
And I know what coverage this did get this week made it sound like this was, this new thing that's exploding. As you rightly point out, this has been going on for, since the country was essentially
mid-decade redistricting has been going on and on and on. The reason why you have mid-adjustments are a lot of lawsuits that are filed after the initial 2 years after a census, that initial redistricting is done. That's what you see out there right now, is a lot of states are involved still in challenges over those early maps.
All right, hang with me. We got our final thoughts coming up next on Full Circle Florida, our final thoughts on the week that was and the week ahead. Stay with us. All right, welcome back in, everyone. Final thoughts on this week. I mean, I know Epstein dominated the headlines, but do you think that's going away?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
But the economy is also not going away. You had some good numbers, and then you have a different set of numbers coming out. The economy is not going away. But I tell you the one thing that's really energizing people, and the kids are going back to
They're
school.
going back to
soon.
school. Yes, they are. They need to. Too many video games. It's been a summer, but it's so hot outside.
Yes, it is.
When you talk about next week, do you think we're still going to be talking about the scandal? Or does the news cycle get populated with something else?
I think we're going to see a lot more shifts in light of the flooding in the Northeast, because usually you don't think of natural disasters happening in that area so much. I am starting to see a movement that, because we have so many natural disasters all over the country, they're not just as centralized or decentralized as it used to be, that there's a sudden concern about how can we help states and the people in them survive disasters.
Yeah, well, it's certainly relevant for the state of Florida here. We're on the peak of hurricane season. Dr. McManis, thanks for coming back. Glad to have you. And thank you for watching us here on Full Circle Florida. We hope you'll join us again next week. Make sure to add our 24/7 streaming news channel, ABC Action News Plus. Have a great week.